Whether the team is giving us the highest of highs or the bluest of blues, we'll cover it all here on Commanders Nightly News. I, of course, am your host, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. Let's get to tonight's lead story. How are you guys enjoying your bye week? Mine is going splendidly. I am enjoying the benefits of not worrying about the injury report. I'm enjoying the benefits of not worrying about this week's upcoming opponent and having a headache thinking about all the things that could go wrong. And I'm not looking forward to having my heart feel like it's about to explode in my chest at 3:57, Sunday afternoon. I don't have to worry about any of that. And that ability to be stress-free has allowed me to have a glorious week. And it's not done yet. We have football this Sunday that we get to enjoy start to finish without worrying about the Commanders giving us a heart attack. It's a good time to be alive. And there's still meaningful football left. Feels good. However, there is a story, because with this team, there's always a story. Even when the team is on a bye week, there isn't a such thing as a bye week. We've got news. So let's discuss what is going on. The Senate, the House Committee on Oversight and Reform, they finally released the findings of a 14-month-long probe into the NFL and Daniel Snyder. And what they found wasn't necessarily earth-shattering. I think most of us who have been following the situation rather closely, all they did was confirm what we already either knew or suspected, okay? With Daniel Snyder, it's not too hard to deduce certain things. Like, if you're willing to intimidate a witness or try to give them bribe and hush money, then you're willing to go and hire private investigators to follow NFL owners. Like, these aren't things that fall that far from the tree. We can deduce that. We may not know this for a fact, that he hired private investigators, PIs, to follow NFL owners or Roger Goodell or Bruce Allen. But is that far-fetched? After knowing that he sent out PIs to follow and intimidate witnesses, it's not that far-fetched. So all of that, all they did was confirm the things that we either knew or suspected. I think the biggest thing that came from this, and they confirmed that Daniel Snyder was indeed a part of a toxic work environment, and that he did have involvement in the toxic workplace environment for the better part of the last 15 years, 2 decades, call it whatever you want, however long you feel like it was transpiring. And then I think the biggest thing that might have come out of it for the national media was that, the NFL sort of colluded with Dan Snyder, or the NFL, the term used in this finding is that the NFL was complicit in Daniel Snyder's toxic environment and the cover-up. I think that's the thing, and I always tell the youth of America, especially my kids, it's not the act that's going to get you in the most trouble. You're going to get in trouble for that. But it's the cover-up that's going to get you in even more trouble. You might as well just tell the truth from the jump so we can get to the real issue and move forward. If you try to cover it up with lies and deceit, that's going to get you in even more trouble, and that's where things go off the rails and it gets ugly for you, right? That's kind of what this report says, is that the NFL did their best to bury the Beth Wilkinson report. Who didn't know that? Like, these are things that were already factual for us. I told you guys the minute that the NFL allowed Washington initially to hire Beth Wilkinson to investigate. How can you be okay with a team hiring their own lawyer to then investigate them? Do you think it's going to be a real investigation? I mean, it was a sham from the beginning, right? Then the NFL realized, hey, this actually doesn't look good. We should step in and actually take over the investigation. That's just to save face. And that's what this report pretty much says, is that all Daniel Snyder and the NFL did was try to save face. The NFL never really was interested in uncovering the truth. They were really looking to hide it and bury it and they needed to be able to take control of the narrative, take control of all the information. Over 40,000 pages of information they buried. That's what this thing was able to provide for us. Okay, a bit of clarity there. However, that's what the national media is concerned with. Oh, the NFL was complicit in Daniel Snyder's toxic workplace environment and covering it up, the Beth Wilkinson report, and burying all the... We knew that they weren't going to let all that stuff out. And that, you know, there was this ridiculous agreement between the NFL and Daniel Snyder where he was going to be fined $10 million, fined $10 million, 5 of it coming out of his pocket and 5 donating to charity. So it's a tax write-off, right? It's something that they can use on their taxes to write off. So it's not really even a true fine, right? And then in that same agreement, it also allowed Daniel Snyder to determine what was going to be disclosed to the media, to the public. Like, he's going to allow anything out there that's going to make him look bad or in a negative light. Yeah, right. So it was the dumbest thing. Like, if you're a Washington fan, though, the most interesting part of all of this was none of the stuff that we already either knew or suspected. The most interesting thing was the Bruce Allen deposition that was now released, and we got to actually see what was said. Remember, Bruce Allen was there for like 12 to 14 hours, right? We were making jokes about New Jack City, and he was in all black and, you know, all of that good stuff. And so, you know, we wanted to know, well, damn, what is Bruce actually saying? I'm like, Bruce's lips might be a little loose over there, man. Somebody go grab some Liptons, because this man might be over here spilling some tea, right? So, you know, me and my wife were saying, hey, he over there giving out some Liptons, man. Some hot, I'm talking about piping hot. You got to blow it. Then you got to sip it. You got to sip it slow and hope it don't burn your tongue type of Liptons. Again, anything you get from the Prince of Darkness. We didn't name him the Prince of Darkness for no reason. Anything you get from him, you got to take with a grain of salt. So you can't assume that Bruce Allen is just telling the truth and whatever he says is gospel. Okay? So take everything you get from Brucifer with a grain of salt. Okay? He's not innocent in all of this. He's not innocent in any of this, really. Now, some of this stuff predates him, which he made sure he made mention of, like, hey, that stuff happened before I came on board. I didn't get there until 2010, essentially. Like, I got nothing to do with all that other stuff, which he's right about. Like, everything that predates 2010, Bruce has no knowledge or any, you know, information on that. But anything after that, Bruce is a part of it, okay? But I will tell you this, just because Bruce has been a shady, untrustworthy, and very petty individual as a team president here in Washington, doesn't mean that there isn't some truth to what he's saying, okay? Again, you just have to parse through all the information that he's giving and decide what you want to believe and what you don't want to believe. Again, in the hierarchy of hate that exists in this organization from a fan base that has been abused for over 2 decades, Daniel Snyder's at the top, and the next closest guy has to take like 3 million steps to get to second, which is Bruce Allen. Okay, he's public enemy number 2 in this organization with the fan base. He's no longer here, and we're still feeling remnants of the shit he did when he was here. Okay, so trust and believe that there's still disdain for Bruce Allen, but Daniel Snyder, and anything that is said about Daniel Snyder that is negative, you're going to choose to believe that over anything that is said about Bruce Allen. If you've got to pick between the two, oh, Dan is the one that's guilty of this. So when Bruce Allen says in his deposition, when they asked him about Trent Williams, and a lot of fans seem to be really latching on to this particular piece of information from Bruce Allen. There was a lot that Bruce Allen said, but this is the piece of information that the fans really care about because it affected the product on the field, right? We know that Dan and Bruce both were very petty in the handling of Kirk Cousins. And the reason we didn't get a first-round pick, because Jay Gruden has already told us this information, numerous times that he wanted to trade Kirk. If we're not going to keep him, if we're not going to give him the contract that he wants, we should get something for him. The 49ers called. Kyle Shanahan was desperate. He was willing to offer up a first-round pick. 49ers had some great draft capital that year, and Bruce and Dan both said no and gave him a middle finger. And instead, we got a third-round compensatory pick for our troubles, right? Same thing happened with Trent Williams. And that's the piece of information that all the fans are really holding on to, is that Trent Williams was disgusted with the organization, more so the medical staff. And Bruce Allen, and I'm going to read you exactly what was said by Bruce Allen. I'm going to read the actual transcript here. So here's the transcript from what Bruce, a portion of the deposition. So the question reads as follows. Okay, so this is a series of emails that you started on June 5th, 2019. It's an excerpt from an article about Trent Williams not being at minicamp. And the article states that Williams is upset with how the team's medical staff handled a recent health scare. And there's a little bit of conversation about it. And then you say, let the games begin. As I said, let's enjoy the entertainment. So, in the context of Trent Williams and his medical condition and his displeasure with the treatment of the medical staff, do you remember why you said, quote, let the games begin, close quote? To which Bruce Allen responds, the Trent Williams situation, you're simplifying a little bit too much. Trent did have a problem with the medical staff. He was upset at the doc for not discovering he had a medical issue, I'll say. And he couldn't put a helmet on to be at minicamp, but he was holding out because he wanted a new contract from the team. And Trent and I had a great relationship until all of this, and still did during this time, especially during this time. And we could have re-signed him. He's an elite player. He's a great football player. A great football player, Allen repeats. And Dan said no. He said, and he being Dan, said, quote, not one dime. Fine him the max, close quote. And Bruce Allen says, and that's what we did. So a lot of people are latching on to that, and they're taking that to be the gospel. Now, do we doubt that Dan said those things? No, I don't. I don't for 1 second believe that Daniel Snyder felt like Trent Williams deserved, because I heard from a lot of people that Dan Snyder was pissed off at how the organization, the medical staff had been portrayed in the Trent Williams situation. He felt betrayed by Trent Williams, a guy that he felt like he had gone and bent over backwards for, despite Trent being suspended multiple times for, weed use and things of that nature. He stuck by him. And there was this sense that there was no loyalty from Trent Williams. That's the message that was delivered to me, at least, from multiple sources as to how Dan Snyder felt. Now, the part that is a little bit murky for me, I watch a lot of First 48. And one of the things that people do when they're all complicit in a crime, right? When they're all involved, whether their involvement is minor or they actually pulled the trigger or whatever the case, they all try to distance themselves from the actual murder, right? They all try to say, look, I wasn't actually there. I was outside. I was the lookout. I didn't actually go inside. I didn't see anybody pull the trigger. I just heard a bang. I got in the car. And they came running out, and I drove off. I was the getaway driver. But then somebody else, there's 3 culprits. And then the other guy they talked to says, nah, he went inside. He went inside. I was outside the door. When they went in, I stood outside the door. I didn't go in the house. I stood outside the door, and I was the lookout, right? And then I heard a bang, and I took off running. I didn't even get in the car with them. I heard a bang. We weren't supposed to shoot anybody. They were supposed to be going in there looking for a couple of items. We knew they were stashing drugs and money there. We were supposed to just be going in. They were supposed to be going in, getting the drugs and money. Nobody was supposed to be home, and they were supposed to be coming out. I heard a bang. I took off running. That's everybody's story. I was the lookout. I didn't see anything. I just heard a bang. I ran. All we need you to do is to put yourself at the crime scene, and you're getting charged with murder, just like the dude who pulled the trigger. And in this case, Bruce Allen can sit here and try to separate himself and act as if him and Trent Williams had this great relationship. Trent Williams couldn't stand Bruce Allen. He couldn't. Remember when he came back and he held that press conference, and his locker was right around the corner from Bruce Allen's office, and he was talking loud so Bruce could hear him, and he was saying all types of shit about Bruce Allen? Don't think for 1 second that there was any love lost there. And what Bruce is saying is that they once had a great relationship. That may be true. But by the time that medical staff fiasco started, I don't think their relationship was still the same. Not during minicamp and training camp, things of that nature. He's distancing himself from any wrongdoing. He was probably just as petty as Dan Snyder was during that time frame. Just as petty. We shouldn't pay him anything, Dan. We've stuck by this guy every step of the way, and this is how he repays us? F him, Dan. Don't give him shit. And Dan's like, yeah, not one dime. Fine him the max. And Bruce is like, hell yeah, that's exactly what we're going to do. Bleed. Remember the phrase, bleed him dry? That was from Bruce. We're going to bleed him dry. That was from Bruce Allen. Don't let him fool you. Okay? Don't let the Prince of Darkness all of a sudden ride into the sunset and come back as a white knight because he's no longer here. He's still the Prince of damn Darkness. But all he did was confirm that Dan ain't shit. We already knew that. We already knew that. Like, nothing new came of this. All it did was confirm we need to get Dan the hell out of here. I want to read this comment, though, real quick, because this was a comment that I thought was going in a different direction. I'll only read a snippet of it because I thought this was going to create a real good conversation, but then it turned into a expose or a dissertation on why Taylor Heineke is being hated on and why. And I didn't think that's where this was going when it started. So I won't tell you who sent it. I'll just read an excerpt. So he says, "Morning, Lou. What the F is going on with this fan base?" And when I read that first line, I was like, uh-oh, where are we going with this? And then I saw where he was going. I was like, you know, this is an interesting take because this is what happens. I talk about this all the time. He says, the excitement of Dan potentially selling died down, and now all of a sudden Heineke is public enemy number one. And that's when I stopped. I was like, okay, this took a sharp turn in the opposite direction of where I thought it was going. When he said the excitement of Dan potentially selling has died down, I thought he was going to really put emphasis on, hey, why are we focusing on the thing that's not the most important right now? I get it. 7-5-1 is exciting. We're playing meaningful football. We got a massive game in week 15 against the Giants at home at FedEx Field. There's a lot to be, excited, a lot of conversation around this team, yada, yada, yada. But let's not lose sight of what's important. Getting Daniel Snyder the hell out of here. And if he would have made that point, he would not have been wrong. But I've said this time and time again. When it comes to off-the-field issues, that is made more, it becomes more of a story and more important. During the season, anything that comes out about Daniel Snyder, especially if it's shit that's just being rehashed or reinforced like this, Oversight Committee information, this report that they released, all they did was confirm things that we either already knew or suspected. So nothing really new came out about this. The NFL colluded or the NFL was complicit. Yep, we knew that already. I talked about that the minute the investigation started, right? I've explained this to you a million times. All of that stuff is important in the offseason because there's no football. So that goes to the forefront. The minute there's actual games to discuss, that shit becomes interesting. The games and the team and the success or lack thereof of the team is important. It's something we can chew on a daily, on a weekly, on a monthly basis for the next, 5 to 6 months, depending on how long your team plays, from September all the way to February, depending on how long your team plays, either December or January, we've got actual games to talk about. So you lose sight of getting rid of Daniel Snyder. Now, look, if Daniel Snyder and selling the team is in the same sentence, that trumps, oh, Daniel Snyder had a toxic work environment. You hear selling the team and Daniel or Tanya Snyder's name in the same sentence, ears perk up, and all of a sudden that goes from interesting to important. This had nothing to do with selling the team, so it was interesting. Ah, okay, cool. You guys found, your findings show that Daniel Snyder is a douche. Could have told you that 15 years ago, but thanks. A lot of people are like, dude, you guys are excited about this season, and that's cool. All I care about is Daniel Snyder going to sell the team? We haven't heard anything about Snyder selling. As a matter of fact, we just all assumed that he was selling because he, started to inquire about what he could get back and had Bank of America start to, see what this team would fetch them if they were to sell it in a return, in terms of a return. But we're not 100% sure he's selling. He hasn't come out and said, I'm actively selling the team. I think we just all assumed, because of what transpired, that he was selling the team. And he may ultimately sell the team, and that's the hope, is that this offseason he sells the team, rids himself of ever being associated with this organization again, and we can rejoice and dance in the streets. But as of right now, we got a 7-5-1 football team. And what is crazy is winning this year could rejuvenate Dan, and it could make him want to stay. I mean, wouldn't that be a vicious turn of events for us as fans? The success of the team this year actually actively played a part in Daniel Snyder, who was on the fence about holding on to the squad, decided, yeah, this was fun. I think I want to stick around for a little bit longer. This one season isn't, unless it turned into a Super Bowl season, this wouldn't do anything to change his mind. He's got to go, and I hope he's still going to go. But understand, if you're a fan out there and Snyder selling the team is important to you, which it is to all of us, if you want to talk about that more than football, this isn't the time. Just so you know. The minute our season is over, we got 2 conversations that we're going to have that are going to permeate this fan base in the offseason until they are both solved or there is resolution to both. Who's the starting quarterback of this team next season, and when is Daniel Snyder selling the team? If Daniel Snyder is selling the team. Those are the 2 questions that the minute the last second ticks off the clock to end this season, whether it's in the regular season or in postseason, the minute that game is over, we will go directly to who's the starting quarterback of this team next year, and Daniel Snyder needs to sell. When is he selling, and who is he selling to? Till we get there, all of this stuff is just interesting. In other news, I wanted to ask you guys a question, and this was going to be a lead story for one of the episodes this week on the bye week, but I decided on Thursday I wanted to just let the channel breathe for a day, because I sometimes I feel like I oversaturate you guys with content. Sometimes it's Thursday, you're still on Tuesday's episode, you're playing catch up, and then when I throw in that Wednesday episode that's live and it's 4 hours, it might take you 3 days to actually digest that thing. It's usually, and then, when I throw in a Super Friends stream, you may not watch a normal Wednesday show all the way through. You might take out bits and pieces and consume what you can consume. But when it's a Super Friends stream, you're going to probably watch the vast majority of it. So I wanted to allow you to digest that. Being that there was no football, there was no rush to do another episode. Let that breathe a bit. Let you play catch up if you needed to do that. And then I decided, and I saw the Daniel Snyder, news yesterday, in the report, and I could have done an episode, but I was like, I can just wait till Friday. It's not a big deal. But one of the topics I was going to ask you guys is, now that we know where this team is, 14 weeks into the season, right? They're 7-5-1. They're right on the outskirts of the playoffs right now. If the playoffs started today, they wouldn't be in. But again, you can't do that because the playing field isn't level. We've played more games than Seattle. We'll see what the Seahawks do this week. And same for the Giants. If the Giants lose, from a tiebreaker standpoint, we would be in over them. If they lose to the Eagles, we'd be the 7th seed and the Giants would be out of the playoffs if Seattle wins against Carolina, which the assumption is that they will, right? So, there's still a ton of football to be played this season. Anyway, I shouldn't say that. There's still a quarter of the season to be played, which is not a ton of football, but enough where there's still a lot left to be decided. That said, what constitutes a successful season now that you know that this team is 7-5-1 with 4 games left to play? What constitutes a successful season for you now? Okay, so we've reshuffled the deck. You know what it is. 7-5-1, 4 games left. Playoffs staring you right in the face. Just got to take care of business. What's a successful season for you? Is it 10 wins and a postseason berth? Doesn't matter how many wins, get to the postseason and win a game? Or is it, hey, find a way to get into the playoffs and be super competitive? Or it could be, hey, get to the playoffs, win 2 games, get to the NFC Championship game. Which to me is a bit aggressive. Okay? It's a bit aggressive. But it's not out of the realm of possibility. I've already presented a scenario in which we get the 7 seed. And again, there's no guarantees that the Vikings hold on to the 2 seed. Clearly, Dallas has already romped them at their own place. And if Dallas finishes tied with them, they own the tiebreaker. The Dallas is only a game behind Minnesota. The Vikings are losing again. We could say the same about Dallas, but the Cowboys don't actually have to lose again. They played the entire AFC South, and they played the Eagles in Washington. They don't have to technically lose again. All they have to do is finish tied with Minnesota, and they take over that 2 seed. So, enough football is left for a lot of things to be determined. That said, what is a successful season for you? Washington could easily get the 7th seed, go to Minnesota, beat them, or go to Dallas and find a way to beat the Cowboys, and then the following week have to play Philadelphia back at the link again and go back to the scene of the crime and commit another crime. An even more heinous crime in Philadelphia. And just like that, you're in the NFC Championship game. Again, highly unlikely. Okay? A lot would have to transpire for that to take place. But what's your definition of a successful season, knowing what you know now? 7-5-1 with 4 games left. What's a successful season to you? Can't wait to hear that from you guys. And then this is the last tidbit I'll leave you with. Who should you be rooting for on this glorious Week 14 bye week? Okay? This is a terrible week of games. The 1 week that we're off and we've had a weekend where we didn't have to worry about us playing because we played on Thursday night against the Bears. So it's not the first time this season where we've gotten to relax, kick back, and watch everybody else beat the hell out of each other. But that said, it's Week 14. A number of games impact our standing. So who should you be rooting for this weekend? 49ers play the Buccaneers. Seahawks play the Panthers. Giants and Eagles lock horns. Cowboys are playing the Texans. Clearly, Cowboys aren't losing to the Texans. You can root to your heart's content for the Houston Texans just to make it competitive. They're not beating Dallas. Okay? I could say the same for Carolina, but they're not as bad. They're not as big of a charity case as Houston is. But they're not winning road games. They haven't won a road game, I don't think, this season, have the Panthers. I think all of their wins this season have come at home. So I'd be shocked if they went on the road and beat Seattle. Just don't see it happening. But Anything's possible. You can root for the Panthers if you'd like. Knock yourself out. You should be rooting for the Panthers. Same could be said for the Buccaneers. You should be rooting for the Buccaneers to beat the San Francisco 49ers. Again, the 49ers, at the end of the day, we can't finish tied with the 49ers or the Seahawks. We can only finish better than them or worse. So at the end of the day, what those teams do really doesn't have a huge impact on what's going on with us. The only thing that can help us is if, like I said, somebody implodes, Seattle or San Francisco implodes, that would open the door for all 4 NFC East teams to make it. But at the end of the day, if one of those teams gets in as a wild card, that still doesn't really impact us other than, hey, we just have to make sure we take care of business on our end, which I want us to do anyway. Giants and Eagles, you can root for whoever you like. You can root for whoever you like. Yeah, I'm just rooting for them to beat the hell out of each other. I really don't care who wins. If the Eagles win, cool. Giants will be 7-5-1, just like us, coming into that Week 15 matchup. And it'll put us one step closer to having a chance to clinch a playoff spot. Because if they lose to the Eagles, they lose to us, and then they lose to the Vikings the following week, all we've got to do is win one of our remaining 3 games after we beat them. And we're in. It's that simple. Okay? It's that simple. So, at that point, you feel really good. So, you could root for the Eagles if you like. If the Giants beat the Eagles, it doesn't make us that much of a difference. They're 8-4-1. We play them. We beat them. They're 8-5-1. We're 8-5-1. But now we own the tiebreaker. So technically speaking, we're still above them. They've got to go on the road and play the Vikings the following week. If they lose that game, now we're 2 games ahead of them if we win the following week, which is going to be tough. It's San Francisco, but nothing's out of bounds. Nothing's out of the realm of possibility. So, again, you can root for the Eagles. You can root for the Giants. If the Giants beat the Eagles, what that does is it forces Philadelphia to have to play the string out, which is what you really want. Just in the event that shit somehow doesn't go the way that we planned, and we need the Eagles to beat them in Week 17, or 18 rather, they've got to play their starters because they haven't locked up the number 1 seed in the first round bye in the playoffs and making the playoffs go through Philadelphia for the entire duration of the playoffs as long as they're alive. You want Philadelphia having something to play for. So either way, it's going to benefit us. So I don't care who wins. I just want them to beat the hell out of each other. That's all. But you can root for whoever you like. I think the only 2 games that I'll really have a rooting interest in is Tampa Bay, San Francisco, and Seattle and Carolina, because those 2 teams, I would like one of them to gracefully bow out. And I don't think San Francisco, with that defense being as filthy as it is, I don't think it's going to be them. If it's going to be anyone, it'll be Seattle. But I don't think they're going away either. But we will see. Anyway, I digress. You guys, have a great weekend. Enjoy the football. Enjoy the remaining, days of your bye week, because this is the last week until this season is over for the Commanders that you will be able to relax. I guarantee it. The rest of the season will be as stressful and as toxic for some of you because the relationship that you have with this organization is unhealthy, and you're not going to be able to relax and feel comfortable because the games will mean more and more, and you will get tighter and tighter, and your chest will feel heavier and heavier. So just enjoy this week, or what's left of it. I sure as hell will. Hope you have a great weekend. I'll see you next week, or for some of you, I'll see you on Sunday night at the conclusion of Dolphins and Chargers. But for the rest of you who are Commanders fans, I'll see you on Monday, ready to rock and roll, locked, stocked, and ready to rock the New York Giants. And what a week it's going to be next week, leading up to that Sunday night contest. Have a good weekend. See you next time.
Here comes the Diesel. Here comes the Diesel. There's the snap, hand to Riggins. Good hole. He's got the first down to the 40. He's gone. The 35, the 30, the